Okay, I'd like to say good afternoon and welcome everyone to Western Liberty Network's weekly Saturday training. These training sessions are held every Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific time and can always be reached through the links and passcode information provided on the www.westernlibertynetwork.org website. My name is Richard Burke. I'm the Executive Director of Western Liberty Network. Excuse me. Western Liberty Network is an organization consisting of myself, a board of directors, an advisory committee, and numerous volunteer trainers, including Tom, who you're going to hear from today. WLN's purpose is to reweave the fabric of our political culture. We do this by empowering limited government activists to take control of their own governance by building a farm team of trained local, nonpartisan office holders, citizen advocates, and campaign volunteers. WLN trains activists who, in turn, use their training for the campaigns and causes they care about. Although it's designed for limited government activists, everyone is welcome. If you would like to support Western Liberty Network, simply go to the westernlibertynetwork.org website and go to the support tab. All contributions to Western Liberty Network are fully tax deductible. I want to also promote that next week, instead of this normal training, we will be Zoom casting our 11th annual conference. Details about the conference are on the westernlibertynetwork.org website. Stephen Moore will be there, Senator Kim Thatcher, Senator Dennis Linthicum, Representative Mike Mearman, Tom here, of course, will be there, Clackamas County Chair Tootie Smith, Lilia Zukov of Slavic Vote, and it's just going to be a fantastic event. We've sold out for the live meetings, but the Zoom cast will be free, and you'll be able to access it by going to the westernlibertynetwork.org website and clicking where it's indicated, and the passcode information is provided there. We hope you'll all be there in one way or another. Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 educational organization. As such, WLN does not endorse or support or oppose any political party, any candidate, even the ones we train, ballot measure, or legislation. The statements and other forms of information provided by our guest trainers and participants are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Western Liberty Network. To make sure we have the best audio-visual experience possible, I will begin the training session by muting all participants except the guest trainer. If you want to speak during the session, you may unmute yourself, but when you are finished speaking, please mute yourself again. This practice will minimize audio feedback and distracting background noises during the training session. Today's guest trainer is Tom Cox. Tom is a good friend of mine. I've known Tom since, I guess, the early 90s and worked with him in a variety of contexts. I've seen his presentation today where he introduces him, and because he introduces himself in the presentation, I won't duplicate that information here. Suffice to say that I believe this may be one of the most useful and effective weekly training sessions we have held to date. With that, I introduce Tom Cox to facilitate his presentation. I will turn hosting privileges over to him for the remainder of the session. Tom, the venue is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone. Ginger, Donna, Rosalie, Jeanette, thank you for being here. I'd love to hear a little bit about each of you, if I may, and in particular, what it is that you are hoping you might get out of today's session, what aspiration you have. I know that Ginger is an activist in Central Oregon who's looking to help find a new energy, a new direction. And I know that Donna is an analyst looking at bills and active with the Oregon Citizens Lobby as well as Oregon Liberty Coalition. Don't yet know about Rosalie or Jeanette or Rebecca, and I know I would like to. So get from any one of you, you can either type it in if that's easier for you, or just speak. Tell me what motivated you to come today. What's one thing you hope you might get out of it?
Oops, oh dear.
Rebecca, would you like to go first?
Ugh.
Taking that as a no. Rebecca is muting yourself. Rosalie, any thoughts? No, Rosalie's thinking.
Okay, I'm thinking. I'm just an old Republican and want to know where we're going to go, and how we're going to go.
Great question. Love it.
Pure and simple.
That's fabulous. And then it's kind of the same thing I heard from Ginger.
Yeah, I'll go. So my name's Jeanette, and I've come pretty much every week with Richard, and Richard's able to do a training at my house with the group as well. And I plan on running for a school board position in 2023. So I'm just soaking it all in while I have a couple years to work up to that.
Super. Got it. Well, feel free to interrupt me at any time with questions. Either type them in if that's easier for you, or just speak them if that's easier for you. I'm happy to be very interactive with this. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up my slide deck, which I showed Richard not long ago. And she did not too violently object to, so it must not be too bad. So just a moment, we'll be seeing that on the screen. Okay. How's that?
Limited government. Okay.
Limited government, collectives, and organizing around local issues. Visible? I'm guessing it is. Super. Now I want to start off not with how to organize, but with a definition. I know I've been a limited government fan for a long time. My background includes being the Libertarian Party candidate for governor of Oregon in 2002, Libertarian Party of Oregon state chair in 2003. I was the GOP candidate for treasurer of Oregon a few years after that. I'm an award-winning Toastmaster. I'm a management consultant, and I'm a leadership expert. I believe very strongly in the importance of limited government, and that's why I'm excited to be talking to you today. And I've been studying for the last 3 years the concept of collectives. And I've realized over this past 3 years that I would have been a lot more effective as a limited government advocate if I'd had a better understanding of the inner nature of collectives. I just knew that the word collective was a bad word. I didn't like it. It's too communist, it's too socialist, it didn't make me comfortable. But I didn't really understand it. And then I got thrown into the world of blockchain software, which actually creates collectives in software. And they're struggling actually with understanding the nature of collectives as well. So that was my crash course. I want to talk about what governance is very briefly, because what we're trying to do as activists for limited government is influence the governance processes of our various representative governments, government agencies, and so forth, to better respect individual liberty. You have to understand that playing field. We'll wrap up. Most of the time will be spent on how to use local issues to organize and recruit. So what's a collective? A collective is any group where the members agree to give to the group the power to, number one, reach less than unanimous decisions that nevertheless bind all the members. In other words, you may not agree with tax policy, but you've still got to pay the tax at whatever the rate is that the majority has set. Or you may not agree with our national defense policy or our posture towards China. But guess what? We as a nation have one policy. Or if the city council says for the city, you can be the minority, you can be the majority, but you're bound by the decision. That's what it means to be a collective. It also means that this power that we individuals give to the group is usually about specific topics, and we can use different decision rules to make different decisions. So some are majority rules, some are supermajority, some require 2/3, and so on. We also agree to give the group the power to compel individuals to honor the group decision. It's binding, and we are giving up the power to complain or opt out on pain of usually being ejected. If you don't like which way our Toastmasters Club is going as a club, you can either run for office and change the policy, or you can leave the club. You get the idea. And thirdly, these are the three things: decisions that bind, compel us to honor, and then to change the collective rules via the same collective process. So if we want to change our bylaws on how we vote, we have a vote on how to change the bylaws on how we vote. Okay. By the way, every organization is a collective. If it's not a collective, it's not an organization, it's just a group. Okay, it's not just about voting. If two wolves and a sheep vote on what they have for dinner, pretty soon you're down to 2 members. And this is the dark side of collective decision making, is sometimes it's the many are predatory against the few. There's a danger there. Here is another way of thinking about this, that it can be either easy or hard for our group to get to a unanimous agreement. And so on the left-hand side, it's the easy stuff. On the right-hand side is the hard cases. And then can we just split the decision? Like if we can't agree on is it beef or chicken, well, can some of us have beef and some of us have chicken? We'll just split up, right? We don't have to all do the same thing, do we? But sometimes we do, right? Splitting is okay or it's not okay. So let's look at these 4 cases. If unanimous is easy and it's okay to split, it doesn't matter what we do. And if unanimous is easy and it's not okay to split up, then okay, let's just take the time and put in the effort to get unanimous, right? Small clubs, small organizations, families, small towns. Hopefully, usually most of the time we can get to agreement. If there's a really strong minority not happy, maybe we want to like have a social ethic that we take time to really figure out how to get closer to unanimity. If it's hard to get to unanimity and it's okay to split things up, let's just do that. Why do we have to have like a national policy on what they have for lunch? I don't want that. I don't want a national lunch czar. I don't want a national bureaucracy, parachuting lunches in. It'll be bad food at too much money. If you've got a group of 100 people and they all want to eat together, give them all menus and let them pick individual foods, or go to a food court. They can all go to a different little cart or pod or whatever and get their different meal and then sit together as a group. But there are a set of things that cannot be split, and being unanimous is too difficult to get there. And you still have to decide. And that's the realm of collective choice. And that's where politics comes into play. Because if we weren't in collective choice space, we shouldn't be using the government for it. All collective decisions have winners and losers. Otherwise, it was unanimous and everyone's a winner. In which case, it wasn't a collective decision, it was a unanimous decision. They tend to be one size fits all. It's hard to opt out and you run the risk of trampling minority interests. Collective decisions almost always favor the politically powerful and the well-connected, and they run the risk of the game of public cost for private profit. These are all the reasons why collective decisions can be problematic over the long run. Why limited government, in my opinion, is superior. Limited government is about reducing the number of decisions that fall into this category. Push decisions down from the federal to the state, from the state to the local level, to get things out of the hands of government back into the hands of individuals. Whereas good government is about making these decisions less badly. So you'll see that limited government and good government advocates have some overlap, but they are not the same thing. Okay, what is governance? We talked about a collective. Governance is any system of making collective decisions. So if I've got a group, I've got a city council, I've got a tree commission, I've got an advisory group advising the governor, I've got a club, I'm on the board of Western Liberty Network. I'm not, but if I were, right, we're going to have to make some collective decisions and carry the decisions out and tweak the rules. Same 3 I mentioned before. Here's another way of looking at that, is just around and around. We've got rules and processes for making decisions, rules and processes for carrying decisions out, rules and processes to amend the rules. When you're playing the game of politics, this is the space we're playing in. So what's the scope of governance? What's in bounds? All of these things end up showing up as issues, whether it's for your club, your Malheur County GOP, Multnomah County Democrats, Washington County Green Party, I don't care who it is. If you've got a collective, you've got these issues. You got dispute resolution needs, you got to get stakeholder commitment, stakeholder buy-in. You're going to have to make both political and technical decisions. You have to decide who's going to pay who for what. You got to have incentivization for good action. and some kind of change management mechanism. All these are inbounds. So for example, 20 people want to have 5 large pizzas, like the food examples, as you can tell. Great. What if they all come to agreement? After an hour of wrangling, 20 people have all finally agreed what the 5 pizzas are going to be and what the toppings are going to be and what the crusts are going to be. Oh my goodness. Finally, a decision has been made. We have an agreement, press release. Okay, great. But there's still no pizza. There's just an agreement about pizza. This is similar to a lot of, well, the leftists love to do this. You know, oh, we've joined the Paris Climate Agreement. Nothing's happened. It's just an agreement to do things. There's no doing. Someone still has to put together the order, pay for it, pick it up, serve it. Right? Step 1 is just that. Now, don't get me wrong. Getting to agreement is hard, but you're not done. And then what if you want to amend the rules? So again, governance is these 3 elements. Don't forget them all. Okay, now here we get into the meat of what you came here for. How to organize around local issues. I want to introduce you to a diagramming technique I often use when I facilitate groups. So you guys can do this with your group. Talk about what's today and what's tomorrow. What do we not like about where things are today? What would we like tomorrow to be? You get your group to start to answer this question.
Get crumbs.
Go ahead, Rosalie. Was there something you wanted to say?
No, I was talking to my husband.
Okay. Is it okay with you if I mute you for the moment?
Yes.
Tom, while we're broken
yes, sir.
from your meeting, you're the host right now.
Yeah.
So I think if additional people are coming into the conference, you're going to have to let them in through the waiting room.
Yep, absolutely, yes.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
And in fact, what I'm going to do is disable the waiting room. So there isn't anyone in there, but if there were, they'll just pop straight into the meeting at this point. Super. Right, so here you are, you're looking at, today is the bitter place. And I only say bitter because bitter and better almost rhyme. The bitter place and the better place, today and tomorrow, metaphorically speaking. And the idea here is ask people, like, what do you want? Now you tell me if this is what you want. You want to have more limited government policy outcomes, more good government activities like anti-corruption, more limited government elected officials, and broader public support for limited government. Let's suppose that this was yours. Now, Jeanette, I'd love to get your thoughts on what you would put up here for the group that you're a part of, or maybe what you'd like to say as a candidate for school board. You may not know yet. I'm putting you on the spot, and I know that. But Jeanette, if you're going to be a candidate, people will put you on the spot. So this is good practice. It's a friendly audience.
Yeah, so what, I'm sorry, I was writing. What do you want me to specifically do again?
So here's a format of, what's wrong with today and what might a better tomorrow look like. So either for whatever group you're active with today, if you're a member of a particular group, or just for your own candidacy, on behalf of the school board, I would say that today we have this problem and I want tomorrow to be like this.
Okay, I'll take it from the school board side. So today we have the issue with one-sided politics being directed into the classroom, which creates an issue for the public at large as time moves on. And what we want to look at tomorrow is having a more balanced approach, and to also have teachers not bring in the personal politics into the classroom, but to be able to have teachers look at both sides of the issue and allow the students to debate them out or think about them, and also to think about the age and development level of the children, because to put it in elementary schools is not okay for those lower elementary levels, as they're not fully developed, they don't understand what's going on. But as we get older, or as the students get older into middle school, have some limited discussion there, let them get their ideas and opinions out, and then high school, let them broaden those opinions further.
Okay, so it sounds like a depoliticization process
Of the schools, yeah.
for schools. Super. And Ginger, I did mute you, but you don't have to stay muted. I wasn't sure if you were doing anything. So, super. And one of the things I suggest you do for your groups is start to develop a diagram somewhat like this, where you start putting words to your discontent. Saying, you know, today we don't know what we're doing next, or feel rudderless and outnumbered. Well, tomorrow we want to be effective politically. We want to have our candidates getting into office. We want to roll back overreach from our opponents in some area. Obviously, Jeanette's got some very specific suggestions for the school board, curriculum, and teacher behavior. This is a great place to start when you are getting ready to start recruiting on local issues. Okay, and then in the middle, we have key activities that take us from where we are today to where we want to be tomorrow. That could be taking over the school board, it could be recruiting more people, and so on. So let's look at these key activities. Key activities include recruiting and retaining volunteers, activists, politicians, and cadre. I'll define those 4 terms later. Those are different kinds of people who get active in political causes. So recruit and retain people. If you can't recruit and retain people, you're not a leader because you don't have followers. You don't deserve to have political success. Because political success is about mobilizing and motivating numbers of people, not just yourself. And so for Jeanette, that would be getting a significant number of people to show up, sign petitions supporting you, put up your lawn signs, march around wearing your shirts, speak on your behalf in public, lobby to get you included in debates, on and on. Right? The second key activity, and this is not in order, they're all simultaneous, is identifying, communicating, and recruiting around local issues, things that connect with our values, whoever we are. So if the we here is primarily an anti-abortion organization, an issue you probably wouldn't touch would be potholes. And the issue there is you can't take a position on everything. You don't want to. It dilutes your message, it confuses people. Or if you're a small government advocacy group and you understand that there's some local movement to increase the size of federal COVID relief checks. I'm not sure increasing the size of, you might want to redirect some of it away from corporate welfare. That'd be great. But just increasing handouts is probably not going to harmonize well with the organization's values. So be careful. Don't jump on every issue. Find the ones that really resonate. And the third thing, again, all 3 are happening simultaneously. You want to engage in effective political activity. And I'm emphasizing the word effective and the word political. Because what we're trying to influence is collective decision making. And we've got to define what a collective is and what governance is. That's the field we're playing in. By effective political activity, I want to include lobbying and testifying, electioneering and going door to door, whenever we can go door to door again, which is very much of a one-on-one kind of interaction. Even collecting signatures is technically one-on-one. You're talking to people as individuals. Public outreach, public relations, and political theater, which is one-to-many. You'll notice different people will have different affinities for these activities. Some can do both, but some might strongly prefer one over the other. Like, I would never testify in public. I don't like public speaking. Happy to go door to door, or happy to stuff envelopes or make phone calls. And lastly, running and endorsing candidates. And there's probably some other things you could mention, but these to me are the top activities that can change things in the political realm. And to do them, you need people. You need to match the person to the activity. So let's look at a particular recruit. Donna's just typed something in I think is really interesting. Let me hold off and acknowledge Donna's note here. Let's see. Donna says the Democrat majority in the session use study bills to create more government programs they want. They have this session, they have 235 bills to study issues. The studies usually involve public input, which tends to be those they support. We support it. We don't get involved until it comes back to the session. By that time, the fight is lost. What that means is we'll have 235 ways to mobilize, organize, and motivate people and get our views into the public record, because these study efforts, all the public comments are public record. That's a powerful thing. Let's look at the individual recruit. For the individual recruit, they're going to want to hear about an issue they care about. And you have to start with that. If you don't start with that, they will not pay attention to you, and the rest of this is irrelevant to them. And I'll give you a great example. I've got two neighbors. We share a roof. I'm in an attached house. It's a 3-unit condo, technically, and it's a townhouse. And so anything to do with the roof or the gutters, I got two neighbors who are extremely interested in that roof and those gutters. And if there's some sort of issue, like we literally had an issue with one of the gutters being clogged, and I got in touch with the neighbors, and they were very interested in that conversation. Why? Because it affects them a lot. Whereas across the walkway to my north, I got two more neighbors. They don't care about I guess they care a little bit because we're neighbors, but they don't care in the same way. They're not attached. They're not affected. They're not impacted. They're not the right audience. So you talk about the issue they care about. And you connect the thing they care about with a sense of purpose. You know, the cause of living in government is an abstract. It's a sense of purpose, but it shows up as lower taxes, lighter impact regulation, more effective regulation, greater individual choice, more respect for individual differences and individual freedom of conscience, and so on and so on. You've also got to give them activity they enjoy and training. People like to be good at things. Because a lot of them like to try new things, especially if other folks around them are doing it. It can be put out in a fun way. But people like organizations that do things. It's not just sit around, talk, and complain, but have a plan of action. Every meeting, something useful has to get done. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes of filling out a petition or writing a letter to a representative. You've also got to do something that I know the libertarians in particular are unusually bad at. And that is camaraderie, a sense of belonging and acceptance. I've been to some GOP events that are kind of okay. It's really variable. It varies by the individual leaders. The Democrats, by contrast, are brilliant at this. They lead with this. It's like they get you there just for social contact. People show up to Democrat events again and again and again because it's fun. And all their friends are there. And, oh, what are we doing today? Oh, we're filling out a petition? Oh, okay.
And can
You
I
just show up and do the work.
here, Tom? Can I chime in here, Tom?
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've dealt with this phenomenon myself, and you and I talked about it this morning. I have been asked to speak at a variety of Democratic events as sort of the token conservative, and I show up early when they have their social mixers, and what they'll do is they will have an event that is at some interesting place. In one case, it was a museum. They had attractive lighting, nice decorations, they had hors d'oeuvres, they had a keg of beer, and they invited a lot of ladies to show up, and of course that means the guys showed up, and there was about 45 minutes of socializing, and then they would say, okay everybody, we've got a few things we'd like to tell you, and then they'd go and do their business for about 15 or 20 minutes. That's it, no more. And then they would say, okay, that's it. Let's have fun, everybody. And then there was a party for an hour and a half. And then everybody went home having a great time. And then they all went and told their friends what a great time they had. And of course, they started to build relationships with each other. And that got them invested in the issues. And, you know, they sort of got baked into the organization. In contrast, I can't tell you how many times I've heard of conservatives holding a constitutional history class on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at a church where they told their kids to attend, they made their kids attend. And generally the kids that attended were not necessarily the most popular kids at school, and it became an unpopular thing to do. The kids didn't want to do it. It's hard. It's conservatives need to think a lot harder about the social component of getting people invested in the activities they engage in. If you are running a race for school board, make sure that you have some events that are just fun. Have a bowling night or something where you have 10 minutes of business. Have a party. Now, most of the time you're going to have to work, and during the campaign there's going to be work. But if you have those camaraderie building events and you have situations that are fun, you're going to get more volunteers, you're going to keep more volunteers, and they're going to say good things about involvement in your organization when they go back to their coworkers, their friends, their family members, and other circles. So that's the comment I had for you, Tom.
Yeah, and I would do you one more, and that is go to other people's events. There's absolutely nothing wrong and a whole lot right with dropping in on anything put on by the Bus Project, anything put on by a nominally nonpartisan yet somehow magically left-leaning organization. Go and take notes. Go and pay attention. Take photos. Take selfies or over your shoulders, the interesting stuff. Eat their food. Drink their beverages. Learn from them. Because one may disagree with their policies, but clearly they can be effective. And also learn what not to do. If something isn't working, make note of that as well. But become a student of this kind of organizing, of recruiting people, retaining them, keeping them involved. The fifth and final and possibly most important thing you must give the group, I'd say the camaraderie, sense of belonging and acceptance is tied neck and neck with victories and a sense of progress toward a worthy goal. Tremendously important to feed your people stretch goals and signs of progress and constant praise for the people who made that happen. So I'll give you an example. Avon Products, my dad used to work for Avon Products many years ago. He was in their public relations. And they were phasing out animal testing because everybody was on the cosmetics. And as they phased it out, PETA, P-E-T-A, People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, who are very much anti-animal testing, anytime Avon did anything in that direction, they would put out a press release claiming that it was because of them. You know, PETA claims victory in forcing Avon to do something Avon was going to do anyway. It's like, we made the sun rise today, whatever. And you don't want to go too far with that and be implausible, as I sometimes see. But if you get a hearing delayed or you get a public comment period extended, if you even like make them cancel a meeting because they're afraid you're going to dominate the meeting, all those can be spun, I think, accurately as victories or positive steps. And this is the kind of thing we can have further trainings on that. But these 5 things: issue, connected to a purpose people care about, activity they enjoy that moves the ball forward, camaraderie, sense of belonging, and sense of progress toward the worthy goal. The more you do the activity, the more progress we make, folks. Let's do this. Woohoo. Yeah, that makes a difference. And people now want to belong more to a group that does interesting things and makes positive change. And it's fun to show up at. Now, I'll tell you about camaraderie and sense of acceptance. As I said, for a while, I was with the Republicans. I think I'm back with Libertarians again. I was independent for a while. I even registered as a Democrat briefly as a protest. I felt politically homeless. I was kind of wandering from encampment to encampment. And when I was with the Republicans a couple years ago, we had this volunteer who was pretty reliable. One night, the volunteer didn't show up. I'm like, gosh, that's bad. You know, someone who's really reliable then doesn't show up. I hope nothing's wrong. And I called her and I just left her a message. I said, hey, we missed you. Anyway, I heard back from her. She said she'd volunteered for 20 years. My message was the first time anybody ever said they missed her. It was the first warm, emotional outreach she'd ever gotten from the entire party apparatus in 20 years of volunteering. That's appalling. Can't be doing that. Okay, you get the idea. So let's talk about the organizing cycle. Given your values and your purpose, and those have to be clear, notice a relevant local issue that's upsetting people. And the key here is relevant. If it's not relevant to your purpose and your values, pass. If it is relevant and people are upset, you can help those upset people redirect their upsetness in a constructive direction and help them bring about the change they want by joining your organization or helping the organization make this change. You can also identify groups whose members might care. So I'll give you an example. Here in Portland, I currently live in Portland, Oregon. Not a great decision, but we all make mistakes. And they're in the process right now of taking Sandy Boulevard, which is this big diagonal road that's 5 lanes wide, right, 2 in each direction and a center terminal. And they're in the process of going through this replanning to eliminate 1 lane in each direction for cars. Go from 2 lanes to 1 lane in each direction for cars to give a dedicated bus lane. And they're touting this as it's going to improve throughput to cut the number of lanes in half. I'm sorry, who is that Ginger laughing?
Sorry.
And they say it with a straight face. And nobody believes it, right? But they got paid shills on social media. Oh, if it gets people, it'll get people out of their cars. It'll speed buses up by 2 minutes each direction over a 45-minute bus ride. And then it'll save like 2.5 hours in a year. Like, that's worth incredible disruption to all the people not in the bus. But you get the idea. It's horrible. The optics are bad. Everybody hates it who hears about it, which is why they're being pretty quiet about it. It fails the test of common sense. And it comes on the back of a bunch of other TriMet and Portland Bureau of Transportation overreach and mismanagement, all of which is very well documented in opposition websites. See, there's a lot of material here. And then you find the groups who might care, and you ask those groups to ally with you and or let you address their members, maybe through their newsletter or at one of their events. And you invite them to take action with you. And that could be, sign up on our newsletter to be kept up to date on the fight, or come on Saturday, we're going to do a fun group event to make sure our voices are heard. Or we've got a training clinic on how to participate in the public outreach effort that PDOT's got to open up. So you can go on their website and say something really effective, blah, blah, blah. And communicate every small victory and every milestone. So we got our 10th volunteer, we got our 100th volunteer, we had our 1,000th volunteer hour. Woohoo! These are milestones. Talk about it and honor your volunteers. I worked with a guy who was the volunteer coordinator for a campaign for state rep. And he really wanted his volunteers to feel cared about. And he asked his boss, what kind of budget do I have for little tokens of appreciation for the best volunteers? And the guy said, 0. So he said, fine. He went over to where they had the paper plates. He took a paper plate. He took a stapler and like unhinged it so it was straight, put the plate up against the wall, hit it with the stapler to staple this plate to the wall, and wrote on it the name of the best volunteer for that day. The next volunteer who came in the door looked over there and said, how do I get my name up there? It doesn't take much, but it does take, you got to do it. You got to show up and do the effort. Where do you look for local issues? Tune into the local topics. Look at a social site like Nextdoor. It's a very, very localized social media. You can only join it by geographically demonstrating where you live. Local news websites, and in particular, the unmoderated comments. Now, I was shocked to discover that OPB radio, Oregon Public Broadcasting Radio, when they would do their talk shows, they would go to the Oregonian website and browse through the comments to see what people think, because that was their only access to what people think. If you can pack the comments with your people, you can start showing up on other people's, as an input to other people's media, right? OPB, oh my gosh, there's this upswell. you can read comments and see who's posting and get in touch with them. Say, hey, I really like what your comment. We got some like-minded people. We're getting together to talk. I'd love to have you there. Got some people I think you'd like to meet. I know they'd like to meet you. Heavy social component, right? Other local social media groups, you know, the Malheur County Boosters, the Lake County Hunters and Gatherers. I don't know, I'm making stuff up. You get the idea. But make sure you're looking locally. And the harder it is to be infiltrated by Russian troll bots, the better. Talk radio can help to surface issues, but not to identify people. And the nice thing about Nextdoor local news website comments and so forth is you can actually find the names of people who care. Another thing you can do is once you've identified the issue, go door to door with leaflets and let people know that there's an issue and that you're organizing around it. Let's see what happens with that. I want to mention some volunteer types because how you handle people is going to be different. Not just extroverts and introverts. You should notice that about people and you do handle them accordingly. The generic volunteer, the person we just call a volunteer, typically they're doing one-on-one activities like phone calling, door knocking, envelope stuffing, back office stuff. Your introverts can do fine at this. We had Richard Burke and I worked with a guy named Richard Whitehead. He just recently passed. He was my best volunteer in some ways. He would always show up and he would just work uncomplainingly, smilingly, pleasantly, really fast, addressing envelopes by hand, stuffing envelopes, making calls, whatever it was. He was awesome. Then you got activists. These are the people who prefer one-to-many activities. They're often single issue, but they're happy to go and make a public comment at a televised hearing or in front of city council or some commission. They're happy to march in a parade or march with a banner or hold a protest sign. They, as I say, they're often but not always single issue. And you can often find people who are activists around an issue and pull them in temporarily as allies with you around something. The third type of volunteer is your politician. They're generalists. Jeanette, I have news for you. You're going to be a politician. Because when you get elected to that school board, and Richard can vouch for this, Richard's been an elected official for many years, you may campaign on one issue, but you have to manage all the issues that come to you. You have to manage the budget. You got to manage all this other stuff. And so if you're a politician, you're going to run for public office, you're going to have to be a generalist for that office.
Yeah. Can I kick in here for a second, Tom?
Yeah, please. Please.
Okay. I've been elected to 2 local school committees, and I've served, I won 5 elections, served a number of terms on a local water board. And, I had my pet issues, everybody does. But you do have to be ready to talk about almost anything because people will stop you in the grocery store. Maybe they saw your picture in the paper. Maybe they read something on Nextdoor or Facebook, and they will stop you and ask you about their pet issue. And what I would say to you is if you know nothing about it, don't try to BS your way through it. Just tell them, I haven't looked at that particular issue, but I'd like to meet with you and maybe we can have coffee and talk about it, or I'm going to study it or something, and then get back to them, get their contact information, get back to them. But do try to be well-versed in as many issues as you can, because if you take a shot at getting well-versed, you will be prepared, or at least more prepared, for those impromptu moments that you have to deal with.
Yeah. And that's why I differentiate between activists and politicians. Activists know everything there is to know about one issue, one topic, one something that they care about. Whereas the politicians don't have that luxury. And so if you're going to run for public office, you got to be prepared. And Richard says, when someone stops you and they want to talk about an issue you know nothing about, say, I'm not sure I know nearly enough about that to have a really informed opinion, but you clearly care a lot about it. What can you tell me? Like, tell me why this is important to you. Where do you get your information? And I literally, I'll pull some paper out somewhere. I'll start taking notes. If there's time, I'm going to say, look, this sounds too interesting for a 5-minute stand-up conversation in a hallway. when are you free? Let's make an appointment and talk. And then you keep the appointment. And you just suck them dry, and you treat them nicely, because their passion is interesting. And if they're passionately opposed to you, it's still interesting, because you've got to understand the other side when you get into political debates. And if you can listen respectfully, they can't hate you, which makes it hard for them to work very hard against you. This is one of the reasons that we love to caricature and even go so far as to, dare I say, hate, or at least passionately dislike political figures. It's so much easier to work against them if you don't really look at them as fully fledged human beings with love and hopes and fears and families and so on. I used to have such disdain for Cory Booker until I read a little more about him, and I discovered he was actually kind of a cool guy. Hate his policies, but my passion against him was much muted because I know things about him. So, oops. That's politicians. Cadre. These people are made of gold. Richard Whitehead was not quite cadre because he wasn't an organizer. You only need 2, 3, maybe 4 cadre members, but you absolutely need them, because they keep the organization alive and running. They show up all the time. It's their passion.
Oh, in the house. Okay. Yeah.
Ginger, I'm going to mute you, because you're clearly not talking to us about your garage. So cadre are crucial. You want to look for them. And Jeanette, your cadre might be a husband.
Yeah.
Might be, best friend, next door neighbor, someone else who's passionate about these issues. You might only have 1 or 2, but they're absolutely crucial.
Okay, we have, I'll make sure I'm muted.
Ginger, you're not muted.
Oh.
There you are. You're muted now. Thank you. And the last one I want to mention, and this one's important, just because they're so challenging, it's the toxic volunteer. They're often policy purists. They come in under the activist banner. Often they've got the one thing that they care the most about. And anyone who doesn't agree with them is wrong, wrong. And they don't want to actually accomplish anything. They want to feel important and be negative and, I guess, exercise their egos.
Tom, can I
forth as
can you
experts
hear me
in
a
being
bit?
pompous? Yeah, please.
Yeah. You taught me something many years ago about how there is a class of volunteer that's not a good volunteer, that always thinks there's a better way to do something, that tends to be critical, and always criticizes others who are taking things on, but they don't add a lot to the organization themselves. And one of the things you taught is if they started saying, well, we should do this, we should do that, you say, okay, that's great, you're in charge. Somebody who's not a good volunteer will get silent very fast if they want to criticize others and not
Without actually
contribute
stepping up. Now, that's not to say that criticism isn't important. Good-hearted criticism is incredibly helpful because it helps us avoid mistakes and it helps us learn. But I literally did this. I was leading a fairly large annual convention for Washington State Libertarian Party. And I was co-instructing with, he had just been the LPO's presidential candidate. He's like this constitution expert. I can't remember his name, Mike something, Bednarik. And so he and I tag teamed instructing. And so the very first thing we did when we went in there is everyone's going to stand up. We're reseating you. We've got a special seating arrangement here. Tremendously important that we all cooperate. Looking forward to your help. Thank you so much. So we're going to stand back behind this line. Now, if you've run for statewide office or you've held statewide political office or you've been an officer in the state party, come on up and sit here in the front row or front 2 rows. Or also, if you've donated more than $1,000 or volunteered more than 100 hours in the last year, come on up. And then, okay, more than 50 hours, more than 10 hours. And as we get further back, if you volunteered a single hour, that's great. Okay, and then there's a line. And anybody behind this line, they've never volunteered an hour, they've never donated $1, they've never run for anything, they've never held any position of responsibility. I say, guess what? If you want to move forward ahead of this line, you know exactly how to do it. We would love for you to do it. But until then, your opinion does not matter to me. Because the people in front of this line are making change happen. People behind this line, they're running their mouths. That's it. And my teaching, my support goes to the people who are making a difference. Now, it helps that I'm comfortable being bold and a little annoying, and not everyone can pull that sort of thing off. I got to say, the organizers loved it because I was saying what they were thinking, and I made a clear class distinction between people who put in time, money, and sweat, and those who don't.
So I have a question, Tom.
Yes, ma'am.
So looking over these types and listening to what you're saying here, I could see myself in every single one of those
Absolutely.
aspects. And for myself, you know, I have very high morals and values and things like that, but I also will listen to people.
Mm-hmm.
But where I come up against my brick wall is when people want to start arguing and then go into name calling, because that's more emotional than a logical approach. Right. And I do not like emotional arguments at all. Mm-hmm. And so I just go, okay, well, that's your opinion, and I walk away, which some take that as rude, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and have an emotional argument with you, because if we're going to have a logical argument and talk facts and data and stuff like that, then let's go. I'll stand toe to toe with you. That's
a different training. And I have a wonderful book for you. It's called Nonviolent Communication.
Okay.
And a good way, it won't always work, but it often works, and it's delightful to the onlookers when you can do this. If someone is really like so passionate that they're calling names, they're still passionate about something. And what nonviolent communication can teach you to do is to tease out of them what it is they care about and why they care about it. It's like, you know, it's like disrespect for teachers, or it's like, so I'm hearing that you feel that teaching is a really noble profession. And that you feel that maybe people don't respect it as much as they should. Is that basically your point? And when you can restate their point where they feel heard, it's like this, they feel so connected to you in that moment that you actually understood them. You haven't agreed with anything they've said. You just restated their point, maybe in a more positive way.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is one of the areas where political discourse, we don't teach it well. We don't practice it well. This would be a great training sometime, Richard, is how to listen to another person talking about whatever is important to them, and to receive it gently and honestly so that they feel heard without them mistakenly thinking you agree with them if you don't, but to allow them to give voice to it, because behind every policy position is a value. And we can fight over positions, but values aren't fight overable. Like, I take the position that I want a really big handout from the government. Why? Well, I want to be able to feed my family. I'm like, dude, I want you to be able to feed your family. I want us all to feed our families. Yeah, that's a great value. I'm all about that. Now, I might disagree about the means to get there, but in terms of the value of caring for one's family, dude, I am so with you on that. I feel a lot of pride when I can take care of my family, and if I feel like maybe I can't, it's very upsetting to me.
So how do you do that without seeming disingenuous? Because that's all.
By not being disingenuous. By not being disingenuous. And there's an art to that. And I'm going to give you one other piece of homework, if you like, and that is to read maybe the Cliff's Notes version of the book "The Language of Emotions" by Carla McLaren.
By who?
Because Carla with a K, McLaren like the sports car. And I'll get the information to Richard. I'll give you a link to the book a little bit. And reading Carla completely changed my relationship with anger, with fear, with rage, with hatred, with sorrow. I completely changed how I experience those emotions in myself and others, and it gave me more, not yet perfect, but a lot more capacity to be present for someone who's really upset about something, and have empathy for them without feeling any need to agree with them. And they don't need you to agree. They need you to hear them. And Jeanette, when you can do that, this whole idea of like logic, no one makes logical arguments in politics, okay? No one makes their mind up with logic either. People use logic like rocks to throw at each other. People respond to emotion. And when you, Jeanette, can be seen publicly, listen to someone who's really passionate, and you listen and you care about them and you hear them the way they want to be heard without even agreeing with them. But you can say, it sounds like the value behind this position, that you value this thing. And there's very few human values we don't share. We have wildly different ways to approach it, but the values are pretty much shared. And people look at you and go, oh my God, Jeanette is so cool under pressure. And she really understood that person, and that person felt heard. And now I feel a little bit heard just watching it.
Tom,
That's very powerful. It makes you unbeatable as a politician.
This was a very powerful thing that Reagan had going for him. When he ran for president, the first time he won in 1980, most people, according to polling, did not agree with his position on a lot of issues, but they voted for him because they liked him. They seemed personable. He was relatable. He seemed approachable, and he seemed sincere. And he also didn't have a lot of or any.
Yeah, and he was all those things.
Right? What's that? What'd you say?
He actually was all those things.
Yeah, he was all those
Back
things.
into unmute. Okay, yeah, so we'll have him call me. Yeah.
I think Ginger confuses the mute with the unmute, actually.
Yeah.
Ginger, you keep unmuting yourself.
Muting myself.
No, I mute you, and then you unmute yourself.
Oh,
You're unmuted currently.
well, I need to be muted at the moment.
Yes, please do.
Okay, muted. I think I am.
No, you're not.
Oh, when you see the microphone with the red slash, that means you're muted.
Now
There you
you're
go.
muted, Ginger. Beautiful. Well done. So, yeah, getting that backward is it's so hard. We're all going to eventually get expert at this, but we're not yet, most of us.
Well, I know that's something I have to work on
Mhm.
because I can, when I see politicians do that, some do it in a way to where they can seem really genuine. And then there's others where it's like, you're pandering.
Oh,
you
right.
know?
Yeah, it's all about the sincerity. Are they using a technique, or are they actually letting their own emotions show?
Correct.
Right? And I underwent an epiphany a few years ago, right around the time I was reading Carl McLaren's book. And it completely changed my ability to empathically connect with people. Because I used to be very technique-y and artificial. And it did, not all the time, but sometimes. It doesn't take very many of those to just make people not much care to be around you. And I didn't like it much either, but I didn't know any better until I read the book and practiced some of the techniques and learned some of the skills. Empathic communication, Carl McLaren's book on emotion, nonviolent communication, the book, tremendously helpful. And there's something called the Harvard Negotiation Project. And what they'll tell you at the Harvard Negotiation Project is to differentiate, so I mentioned this earlier, between issues and values, or positions and values. And so my position is that we should abolish the Electoral College, which is, by the way, a terrible idea. But that's my position, is that it's a terrible idea. Your position is it's a great idea. Okay, great. So tell me why it's a great idea. Tell me, like, I'm not saying persuade me. I'm just, share with me your thinking here. I'm curious, because I went to a different position, so you got to yours. So what is it about abolishing it that would make life better? Well, it'd be more representative. Okay, so representativeness is important to you. That's a value, representativeness. Okay, great. What else? Right? And then you can come back and say, so what I'm hearing you say is you think this is a good policy choice because you value representation. You think this would be more representative. You value rule of the majority. You think it'd be more like that. And you value some other thing, and you think this good. Okay, cool, I get that. It's interesting is I actually also value representativeness. I think that representativeness, in fact, is what makes government legitimate. Without legitimacy, government can never be anything but tyrannical. So you and I are on the same page on the incredible value of representation. We may differ on policy choice, but we're totally in agreement on that, which I think is nice. We got a plenty to do. Yeah, yes. And you can go down the list. You can point out that I actually value that a lot. Now, don't know if you're interested in hearing why I differ, or if I can just listen to you and you can feel listened to and we're good. That's fine. Or we can go further, and I can tell you why, I end up at a different position location from similar values to you, right? And now it's really kind of a shared conversation. It's not a fight. And onlookers love that because we never get that. We get shouting heads and negativity and people getting shut down, which is only amusing to partisans, and only 10% of the population are staunch partisans who enjoy it. The other 90% just hate it and tune out. So it's, I noticed that we're over time, so I should probably wrap up. We've covered what I wanted to cover in terms of the training. We've had a good digression in an interesting fashion, and I think I now know my next topic. If Richard wants to, if I could talk about nonviolent communication or something like that. But if you have questions for me, happy to chat. You can find me on LinkedIn, Telegram, Twitter. And that's it for my talk.
Well, I'd like to begin by thanking Tom. I think this is one of the more technical trainings that we've had, but also one of the, I guess I'm going to call it a macro training. It teaches us how to build systems of support for the campaigns that we launch, that we run, the things that we care about. This is a toolbox all in itself, all in this one session. And by the end of the week, this training, the recording, will be up on the westernlibertynetwork.org website. It will be on the training tab. Scroll down until you find it. And the PowerPoint presentation, Tom has graciously allowed me to share it with you. And so it will be available for download in PDF form at that time. Also, I want
Richard, I've updated the slides slightly, so I need to resend that to you.
Okay, great. And if you can, send me the font file too, because I think I have a different font. It doesn't render the same. It doesn't render quite the same. But also, I would like to remind everyone that thank you, Donna. Donna gives us a compliment. It says, "Good training, thank you."
Thank you, Donna. It's lovely to hear.
And next week, the conference will be live cast starting at 9 a.m. The live cast is free. So we hope you'll all join us either live or on the Zoomcast. Until then, I want to give my thanks to Tom once again. Is there anything for the good of the order today before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to talk to you a minute, Richard.
Okay.
Non-recorded, non-everybody here.
Okay, I'll stop the recording.
That's my cue to hang up.
Then we can chat. So, all right. You guys are all awesome. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you next week at the conference. Bye now.